The 1980s was loaded with moments that perfectly represent the time. The after-school special is one of these moments. ABC dreamt up the idea and it aired the moral-teaching movies throughout the entirety of the decade. The other big channels got in on it too, with NBC's Special Treat and CBS's School Break Special. The topics covered everything imaginable, from drugs to divorce, but generally they tried to teach kids life lessons. The specials were also known for their attention-grabbing titles, which had kids jumping off the bus, grabbing a snack, and flipping on the TV throughout the 1980s. The late 1980s was dominated by time spent at the mall. One of the most memorable stores at the mall was the Glamour Shots Studio. This is where you could go to have a celebrity-type photo shoot, with over-the-top makeup, props, and of course, the airbrushing effects. These photos weren't cheap either, with hundreds of dollars being shelled out for just one session. But nonetheless, women loved it, and the company continued to grow into the 1990s. The Glamour Shots style was pretty iconic, but it also was easily dated, which is why it has faded into obscurity. Shoe stores like Tom McCann and Kinney's Shoes were the place to go before every store sold shoes. Shoe salesmen would help you find that perfect pair of shoes, and then manually measure your foot to check your size. They would then disappear into the back and finally bring you a perfectly fitted pair of shoes that they would help you into with the assistance of their special stool and maybe even a shoehorn. Today, there is much less emphasis on serving customers in this way, and so you have to try on shoes yourself to find the pair that fits the best. Ever since the late 1980s, when the waterbed hit its peak, it's been slowly disappearing from the American home. The waterbed became a new way to sleep during the 1970s, and it was popular with bachelors. It was during the 1980s that it successfully made the leap to the suburban bedroom, and by 1987, 1 out of 5 mattresses purchased in the US were waterbeds. The real problems with waterbeds was the installation and setup, and the difficulty in moving a waterbed was even more complicated. Plus, there was always the fear of your mattress springing a leak, which is why the waterbed has pretty much vanished from bedrooms. The video rental store was the way many of us kicked off our weekends during the 1980s. There was something special about the evenings perusing the new releases and horror sections, and you would usually walk out of there with a stack of movies to keep you busy all weekend. Stores like Blockbuster, Family Video, and Hollywood Video were among the most common, but there were also countless small local video stores that served up movies to the masses. Getting your own membership card, remembering to rewind all the VHS tapes, and paying the late charges were all part of the experience. Today, on-demand streaming services have made video rental stores obsolete, but for many, those trips to rent movies were half the fun. The VCR era that made video rentals so popular also made recording onto blank VHS tapes a big deal. Not only could you record your favorite TV show, but you could also use your camcorder to record home movies. Those wood-paneled drawer boxes were where we stored them all, and often there were multiple things recorded on the same tape, so it was sometimes hard to find what you were looking for. You might also remember adjusting the tracking on the VCR to get the picture just right. Recording on these VHS tapes is a thing of the past, and nowadays, if you want to record a video, you just take out your cell phone. There are few advertisements that are as memorable as the As Seen on TV commercials of the 1980s. The clapper was one of the biggest selling gadgets during this time, and it allowed you to control lights with the clap of your hands. Their catchy jingle stuck with you, and it also saved you from having to get out of bed to switch off the light, which made it convenient for older people. The sound-activated switch plugged into an existing outlet and had 2 spots to plug things in, and so these devices made great Christmas gifts. Although you can still buy a clapper today, there is no denying that the 1980s was when the clapper was in its prime. When you flip through an old 1980s yearbook, one of the things that really sticks out, or up, rather, is the hair and bangs of teenage girls. The higher you could make it, the better, and Aquanet hairspray was what kept everything nice and stiff. Taking cues from the hairbands of the day, teasing, spraying, and blow-drying is what kept household bathrooms occupied for hours, while little brothers waited. The huge hair fad would end with the decade, and it gave way to the alternative grunge style of the 1990s, but not before it solidified itself as the hair that defined the 1980s. If you were one of the ones that rocked the big hair, then you most likely also gave shoulder pads a try. These foam fashion statements were meant to give women a sharp, defined silhouette that rivaled the suits and ties worn by men. The 1980s primetime soap Dynasty loved the look, as it gave the actresses a distinct V shape which was slimming. The squared-off shoulder look went well with the brightly colored clothing and the 1980s aesthetics, but quickly fell out of style as the decade ended. There were many mail-order tape clubs during the 1980s, but Columbia House is the one that I remember best. This was a way to get a dozen albums for pennies, which sounded too good to be true, so it had many of us signing up. The only catch was that you were billed at full price for future required purchases that sometimes came as a surprise. Columbia House would also send you their selections of the month, and sometimes it was easier just to pay for them than it was to send them back. The novelty of the club wore off pretty quickly though, especially once the bills started rolling in for all the tapes you decided to keep. Let me know in the comments if I missed any of your favorite things that we have now abandoned. If you enjoyed this video, click on this playlist to watch even more. And as always, thank you so much for watching.